She walked in confident, defending Trump like she always does. But within 60 seconds, a college student obliterated her argument right to her face. No yelling, no insults, just facts that left Pam Bondi speechless and the entire room on its feet. This is the roast that went viral and changed everything. Before we get to the moment Pam Bondi got roasted in front of a live audience, let's take a second to understand who she is and why it matters. Pam Bondi is not just some random Trump supporter on Twitter. She's a well-known political figure in America. She served as the Attorney General of Florida from 2011 to 2019. That's the top legal position in the state, meaning she was responsible for representing Florida in major legal cases and making sure the law was followed. But Bondi didn't just stick to local issues. Over time, she became a big voice in national politics, especially during Donald Trump's presidency. She was a strong and loyal defender of Trump, both in the media and in official roles. In fact, during Trump's first impeachment trial in 2020, he handpicked Bondi to be part of his legal defense team. She stood in front of the entire US Senate and defended Trump against the charges related to his phone call with Ukraine's president, the one where Trump allegedly pressured a foreign leader to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. And even after her time as Attorney General ended, Pam Bondi stayed active. She became a frequent guest on Fox News, where she often appeared to defend Trump's actions, criticize Democrats, and support conservative causes, whether it was about the Ukraine scandal, claims of election fraud, or the January 6th Capitol riot. Bondi always had Trump's back. But here's where things get interesting. This time, she wasn't speaking on Fox News. She wasn't at a Republican rally. She wasn't surrounded by fans wearing red "Make America Great Again" hats. Instead, Pam Bondi walked into a university panel discussion. It was promoted as a bipartisan conversation, which means people from both sides of the political aisle were invited. The goal was to discuss the future of American politics in a respectful, open way. Now, this kind of event can be tricky for someone like Bondi. She's used to speaking in front of friendly crowds, places where almost everyone agrees with her. But this time, she walked into a room full of young people, students, professors, and activists, many of whom had very different political beliefs. In short, she wasn't ready. Bondi probably expected to make her usual points, that Trump was misunderstood, that the media treats conservatives unfairly, and that people are overreacting to things like the Capitol riot or the election results. But this audience was sharper, younger, and less afraid to speak up. These weren't just students. They were people who had spent the last few years watching politics closely, challenging authority, and fighting for what they believed in. And when Pam Bondi started talking, someone in that audience had something to say. And what they said would change the tone of the entire event. So picture this. Pam Bondi is on stage, dressed professionally, speaking confidently like she always does. She's explaining why Trump did nothing wrong. She's smiling, using polished political language, and acting like she's in control. But she has no idea that in just a few minutes she's about to get verbally roasted by a student in the audience. Someone half her age but twice as fearless. And the best part? It wasn't a shouting match. There were no insults, just a few powerful questions, a calm tone, and a brutal dose of truth that left Bondi with no good answers. That moment is coming up next, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. The moment Pam Bondi took the mic, you could almost feel the air in the room change. She was calm, confident. You could tell she'd done this 100 times before. She wasn't nervous. In fact, she looked like she was in control. With her signature smile and professional tone, she began speaking like she was on a mission. President Trump has been treated unfairly by the media and the political left. The impeachment was a partisan attack, plain and simple. Classic Pam Bondi. She sounded smooth, like she rehearsed it 100 times because honestly, she probably had. She didn't hesitate. She didn't stumble. This was her comfort zone, defending Donald Trump. As she continued, her tone became stronger. She said the Democrats were weaponizing the Constitution, using it as a political tool instead of respecting it. She called the January 6th committee a sham, saying it was just a bunch of angry politicians trying to bring Trump down for things he didn't even do. And of course, she brought up Trump's law and order leadership, praising him for being tough on crime, strong on immigration, and always putting America first. If you've ever seen Pam Bondi speak on Fox News, this was exactly that. She was in full defense mode. No room for doubt, just full loyalty to Trump. But here's the thing. The crowd she was talking to wasn't buying it. This wasn't a Republican fundraiser. This wasn't a cable news studio. This was a college campus, full of students, young people, and teachers who've lived through the chaos of recent years and weren't so quick to forget the facts. You could see some heads shaking in the audience. A few people were whispering to each other. Others were quietly pulling out their phones, already recording, because they knew something was coming. And then it happened. A student raised his hand. The moderator nodded, and just like that, the mic was passed. Pam Bondi didn't look worried. In fact, she smiled, like she was ready to answer anything. Maybe she thought it would be a soft question, or just a student looking for clarity. But nope, this student, calm, respectful, and sharp, wasn't here to play nice. He leaned into the mic and said, "Ms. Bondi, if defending democracy means overturning a legitimate election, then what exactly are we defending?" Boom! The entire room went quiet. No one even coughed. You could feel the tension skyrocket in one sentence. Pam Bondi blinked. She was still smiling, but it was a little tighter now. She tried to respond, "Well, I believe there were valid concerns about how the election was handled, and people have the right to ask questions." But before she could finish, the student followed up. "So you're saying a violent mob storming the Capitol building, chanting about hanging the vice president, is just a valid concern?" At that point, people in the audience started clapping. It wasn't loud or rude, just a slow, powerful wave of applause. Not for drama, not for disrespect, but because someone had just called out one of Trump's top defenders face to face, using logic, truth, and courage. Pam Bondi paused. She didn't answer right away. You could see her processing. The smile stayed on her face, but the tone changed. She said, "That's not what I said." But the student didn't need to say anything else. The message had landed. Bondi was used to being the one in control. But in that moment, the crowd had shifted. The energy had flipped, and now she was on the defensive, in a room full of people who weren't so easily convinced. And that was only the beginning. Now here's where everything changed. Up until this moment, Pam Bondi had the floor. She was calm, in control, speaking with that usual political confidence. But then, from the second row of the audience, a student raised his hand. Not loud, not aggressive, just calm, clear, and confident. His name? Malik Johnson, a political science major, young, well-spoken, and clearly someone who came prepared. When the mic got passed to him, the whole room leaned in. People could sense this wasn't going to be your typical soft question. Malik took a breath, looked straight at Pam Bondi, and asked in a steady voice, "Ms. Bondi, if defending democracy means overturning a legitimate election, then what exactly are we defending?" The room froze. You could feel the silence. No one moved. It was like the whole space had paused to hear what she'd say. Bondi blinked. You could tell she wasn't expecting that kind of direct hit. She straightened her papers, smiled politely, and tried to recover. She said, "Well, there were valid concerns about how the election was handled. People had the right to ask questions." It was the usual political sidestep, vague, careful, and meant to dodge the heat. But Malik wasn't letting her off that easy. Without raising his voice, without even changing his tone, he followed up immediately. "So you're saying a mob storming the Capitol and chanting about hanging the vice president is just a valid concern?" Boom. You could literally hear gasps. A few people clapped. Others looked around like, did he really just say that? Yes, he did. And he said it perfectly. Bondi froze for a moment. That perfect political smile turned awkward. She tilted her head and replied, "That's not what I said." But the damage was done. Malik leaned in just slightly and delivered the final blow. "No, but it's what happened. And it happened while you were defending him." That was it. No yelling, no insults, just facts. Sharp, real, undeniable. And the audience loved it. The entire room burst into cheers. Not just polite claps, real applause. Loud, passionate, genuine. Some people stood up. Phones were already out, capturing the moment. You could tell instantly this was going to go viral. Pam Bondi's smile faded completely. She glanced down at her notes, shuffled some papers, and gave a small nod, like she was trying to hold it together. But the truth was, she had no good comeback. Not in that moment. Not with that kind of truth staring her in the face. She was used to interviews where the host agreed with her. She was used to talking in front of crowds that cheered everything she said. But here, she had just been fact-checked live by a college student in front of a crowd that wouldn't just take political spin as an answer. And the best part, Malik didn't even need to shout. He didn't try to embarrass her. He didn't try to win with attitude. He used truth. He used logic. And in just a few sentences, he made one of Trump's strongest defenders look completely unprepared. The energy in the room had shifted. Pam Bondi, once the confident speaker, was now trying to regain control. But the crowd had already made up its mind. They saw what just happened. They felt it. And now they were on Malik's side. What happened next? Let's just say the internet was about to take over and Bondi had no idea how fast this moment would blow up. Now this was the turning point. Up until that moment, Pam Bondi had full control of the stage. She was confident, calm, polished, just like people expected. She had that professional look, that political smile, and she was saying all the usual lines her audience on cable news loved to hear. But this time, she wasn't at a Fox News studio. She wasn't being interviewed by a friendly host. She was on a college campus, in front of real students who had lived through the chaos of the Trump years. And when a student named Malik Johnson raised his hand from the second row, everything changed. Malik wasn't loud. He didn't jump up or wave his arms or try to make a scene. In fact, it was the exact opposite. He was calm, cool, confident. You could tell right away this wasn't just some random student looking to argue. Malik was sharp, he was focused, and he was ready. The room got quiet as he took the mic. People leaned in. You could feel the energy shift, like something big was about to happen. He looked straight at Pam Bondi, not rude, just direct. And then he dropped the question, "Ms. Bondi, if defending democracy means overturning a legitimate election, then what exactly are we defending?" That was it. One sentence, and it stopped the entire room. There was no noise, no coughs, no shuffling papers. Everyone froze. Pam Bondi paused. She blinked, still smiling, but it was clear she did not expect that. You could see her thinking, trying to come up with a response that wouldn't make things worse. Finally, she gave her go-to answer. Well, there were valid concerns about how the election was handled. People had the right to ask questions. Safe. Vague. Exactly what a politician says when they don't want to answer directly. But Malik, he wasn't having it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't even change his tone. He just leaned forward slightly and hit her again with a calm, powerful follow-up. "So you're saying a mob storming the Capitol and chanting about hanging the vice president is just a valid concern?" Boom. That sentence hit like a hammer. You could hear people gasp. A few clapped. Others looked around like, "Did he just say that?" Oh, he did, and he meant every word. Pam Bondi froze for a second. Her smile turned tight. She tilted her head, then replied, "That's not what I said." But by then, it didn't matter. Malik wasn't done. He leaned in and delivered the final blow. "No, but it's what happened. And it happened while you were defending him." That was it. Game over. The room erupted. Applause, cheers. Some students stood up. Phones were already recording. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Clips were about to fly. And Pam Bondi? She didn't have a comeback. She looked down, shuffled her papers, and gave a little nod like she was trying to stay composed. But everyone in the room knew she got cooked, and not in a loud, disrespectful way. She got cooked by the truth. That's what made it so powerful. Malik didn't insult her. He didn't try to embarrass her. He didn't act like a smart aleck or try to win with attitude. He just told the truth and let the facts speak louder than any argument. Pam Bondi wasn't used to this. She was used to friendly interviews, soft questions, and loyal crowds, but not here, not today. The crowd had felt the moment. They knew they just witnessed something real. And the best part, they were now fully on Malik's side. And as for the internet, it was already on fire. Clips were going viral. Headlines were being written. And Pam Bondi? She had no idea how fast this moment was about to blow up. This moment wasn't just a roast, it was a symbol of what happens when people decide to stop letting politicians spin the truth and get away with it. We all know the routine. Politicians speak, and sometimes it feels like the truth gets twisted, ignored, or just flat out forgotten. But Malik Johnson, a college student, wasn't having it. He used logic and simple facts to shut down one of Trump's most loyal defenders. And when he did, the entire room felt it. This wasn't just a victory for Malik. It was a win for anyone who's tired of seeing the truth manipulated by those in power. Pam Bondi, on the other hand, wasn't expecting this. She's a seasoned legal mind. She's been in courtrooms, on national TV, and even in the halls of the Senate. For years she's been defending Trump, talking circles around reporters and giving legal analyses on Fox News. She's used to being in control of the conversation. But Malik caught her off guard in a way no CNN anchor or political rival ever could. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He didn't get emotional. He just spoke calmly and directly, laying out the truth in a way that even someone with decades of political experience couldn't dodge. And the people noticed. The students in that room weren't just applauding Malik because he was a college kid speaking up. They were applauding him because he stood up for what was right. He didn't let the moment slide. He didn't let Pam Bondi's polished words distract from the reality of the situation. In a world where political spin often seems to dominate, Malik proved that the truth can still hit like a ton of bricks. The real message here is powerful. Even the most seasoned and powerful voices can be challenged. All it takes is someone who's informed, calm, and unafraid to speak the truth. In the past, Pam Bondi's defense of Trump might have gone unchallenged, but in that moment, Malik flipped the script. It wasn't about yelling. It wasn't about trying to embarrass her. It was about showing that facts are stronger than any spin. And when you stand by the truth, no amount of political experience can stand in your way. As for Pam Bondi, she's back on Fox News. She's still defending Trump, doing what she's done for years. But you can bet she won't forget Malik Johnson anytime soon. He didn't just throw a curveball. He handed her a reality check, and that's something she won't shake off. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a reminder for all of us. We don't have to sit quietly and let people get away with twisting the truth. We can all speak up. We can all ask the hard questions. And we don't need a platform or a big title to make a difference. Sometimes all it takes is one calm voice. One student, like Malik, standing up and saying what needs to be said. So if you've watched this far, don't just let this moment pass by. The truth matters. Your voice matters. And if you're tired of seeing the same old spin, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Share this video, hit the like, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going. Stay informed, stay bold, and let's make sure we never stop questioning the narrative. Join the movement. Subscribe now, because we're just getting started.